Now, the public face of Tibet is the Dalai Lama, the spiritual and political leader of Tibetan Buddhists. But since he gave up on the goal of independence, instead trying to find a peaceful solution with China, does he still represent ordinary Tibetan people? Well, the new film looks at some of these questions. The Sun Behind the Clouds, Tibet's Struggle for Freedom. And it's been made by Tenzing Sonam and his partner Ritu Sarin, both with me now, I'm delighted to say. And we're just going to start by having a look at a clip from the film, which is with the Dalai Lama speaking in Seattle.
We are not seeking independence. We are very much happy. Remain within the People's Republic of China. We are concerned preservation of Tibetan culture, Tibetan Buddhism, environment. So we already made up in our mind not argue about independence, but simply try to gain meaningful autonomy.
The Dalai Lama speaking there in Seattle, filmed for this. Ritu, Sarin and Tenzing Sonam, just let me first of all ask you, you're trying to show three broad perspectives in this film. What are they?
That's right. We want to show the Dalai Lama's perspective, and he's asking for a compromise situation with China. We're also showing the Tibetan youth perspective, people who are saying the goal should be independence. And lastly, we're trying to present the Chinese governmental perspective, which is really where there's no reason for them to say, come up with a compromise with Tibetans.
And those three ideas very much, in a way, deadlocked against each other. Tenzing, if I can ask you, how much now does the Dalai Lama represent ordinary people? I know that's a difficult question, obviously, given the difficulties of filming in Tibet, but obviously there are younger people who are wanting for a tougher stance.
Yeah, the Dalai Lama is kind of universally respected and revered by Tibetans. So in that sense, he always has the support of the Tibetan people. I think the question here is the awareness among the Tibetan community that China is refusing to deal with the Dalai Lama, is refusing to negotiate with him, and is in fact waiting for him to pass away. This recognition, I think, of the situation is leading a lot of people to ask alternative questions. What should the future direction of the movement for Tibet be? And I think in that context, a lot of young Tibetans are asking for independence.
Because obviously we've seen mass demonstrations in the past, a lot of pressure over the Beijing Olympics. None of it has yielded very much movement, and yet the question of succession is not one that's openly discussed, is it?
Yes, for Tibetans, the question of the succession of the Dalai Lama is it's a very difficult question to confront. Most Tibetans don't even want to think about a time when the Dalai Lama is not going to be there anymore. So, in that sense, yes, it's not being discussed much within the Tibetan community. But we feel that if we take the long view, and if China is indeed waiting for the Dalai Lama to pass away, then it's really important for Tibetans to think about how can this movement survive the Dalai Lama? How can we keep it unified and,
And how open were people willing to be when they spoke to you about that question?
We've been involved with this community for a long time and made films about this, so they were very open and very candid. And I think because everyone feels it's important to discuss this, and this is the time to do so, because Tibetans have been in India for over 50 years. China has occupied Tibet for over 50 years. So the time has come, and I think people are ready to do this now.
But one hears of a lot of suppression, obviously, of the Tibetan monks in particular. Did you have access to any of those people?
We didn't have access directly because we didn't go to Tibet ourselves, but we have a lot of archive footage in the film shot by people inside Tibet.
Now, of course, outside Tibet, there's a huge diaspora. Many of those, again, feel that independence is still the goal that they want to push for, while still, obviously, holding the Dalai Lama with great respect. Let's listen to one lady you spoke to.
I think that there's a division likely in every Tibetan between total devotion to His Holiness as our religious and political leader, and then at the same time wanting China out of Tibet, knowing Tibet was independent, that an independent Tibet would be the best for Tibetans. It's challenging for me, for certain, because people want to paint you as against His Holiness if you believe in independence and if you're working for independence. And sometimes the sort of the devotion to His Holiness spiritually clouds any kind of political realism.
Tenzing, you are, of course, Tibetan yourself. This must have been a very emotional film for you to make. What answers did you find that were new? Did you find anything surprising?
Well, I think what was the most surprising thing about making this film was the events that took place in Tibet in March 2008. We had already started shooting the film, and that completely changed the direction of our film. And I think what came out of that uprising in Tibet is that a whole new generation of Tibetans in Tibet have been politicized. And this gives us hope that the movement can survive in the long run.
Okay, and do you think then in that case that whoever takes over, if I can put it like that, next, that they will take a more radical approach? Is that the sense that you were getting?
I wouldn't necessarily call it radical, but I think what we need to do at this point in time is to discuss alternative approaches. One of them certainly being going back to the goal of independence, which I personally believe would be the only unifying aspiration that could keep the Tibet movement alive in the future.
Okay, Tenzing, Sonam, Ritu, Sarin, thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you.